All right, we're live. Once again, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Library of Alexandria. And I have Anitha and Kyle here, and we are going to talk about Dictator, the third book in Robert Harris's tremendous Cicero trilogy. And this has been a great joy to be able to read this because these books have been so freaking good. And yeah, Dictator is the conclusion. The dictator in question being Julius Caesar, not in fact Cicero. And yeah, this book was my least favorite of the three. I knew that the first part was going to deal with Cicero's exile and the Roman Civil War and etc. And I liked the first part more than the second half. Like once Caesar bit it, I didn't like it as much, and I was sure that people who didn't know anything about Roman history weren't going to like it because I was like, if I know all this happens and I still feel like I have whiplash, how can anybody follow what's happening if they don't already know it? But I
I thought
was
it would go
proven
the
wrong.
exact opposite. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So Anitha was, Anitha liked it. But it was still, Jimmy, shut up. But it was still, what's up, Sarah? But it was, I mean, it was still fantastic. Cicero is, and Kyle, I agree with you about the second half that it just like we didn't really have time to like connect with anything. Like everything happened so rapidly. But I still love Cicero, and we'll talk more about the other stuff. But oh yeah, Terenzi, I forgot about. I always forget that they get divorced. Um,
I have mixed feelings about that, but
Anita,
we'll
what
get
do you
to
think about
that.
the book before we continue delving into more of it? What do you think about the book in general?
I loved it. Maybe more than book two. Still, Imperium is like top, but
Nice.
I like this one more than book two. There are some events, especially in the first part, where I felt whiplashed, but I still enjoyed it. Everything what happened. I mean, I think it's more to do with Harris writing than actual content. I mean, the way he made me invested every time Cicero did not get help from his friends, my heart broke. I actually noted down who betrayed him, who
You mean
helped him.
Pompey, who still refuses to freaking help him do anything?
My God, he's such a jerk.
He's awful.
Yeah, from the beginning, we were told that he's such a great, what is that, general, and wow, Pompey the Great. But at the end, he finally, we can spoil it, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But but at the end, when it comes to it, he lost. What did he do? Why was he Pompey the Great? I mean, I understand he won bunch of wars, but I did not see them.
So part of the reason he gets big crumped at Pharsalus is because, um, like he had the numerical advantage on Caesar, but the Senate. There's a quote by a biographer that what Pompey wanted, he had difficulty saying no to his friends. And remember, he's an outsider. He's not from Rome. He's like backwoods royalty, backwoods nobility rather. So the Romans, like the people born and raised, from the like distinguished families of Rome, like they always treated him like a bumpkin, or they always thought of him. They didn't treat him like that because he's too powerful, like a bumpkin. And so, like, they called him a coward for wanting to wait and see what Caesar was going to do. And so he attacked, and that's not in this book, but he attacked sooner than he should have. And that's how Caesar was able to, like, basically trick him, and
Playing into Caesar being
cavalry.
the luckiest man to ever live.
Yes, yeah. And
Caesar
also,
should have lost that war like 3 times.
Oh, for sure. And
Yeah.
also, Pompey was a very conservative general. Like, he just knew how to do things. He wasn't like, he didn't roll the dice a lot with these like wildly like, let's see what happens tactics that Caesar had that always seemed to freaking pay off. And Pompey almost had him at Dyrrhachium before Pharsalus, but wasn't able to press his advantage or didn't press his advantage. I don't know. But Pompey was a good general. He was outmatched. Like Caesar had the plot armor. So, I mean, there wasn't anything he could do. But I hate Pompey, and I'm so glad that Kyle and I both hated him before we ever read these. And this just makes it even worse.
I mean, it did feel like his heart wasn't into it, as one of the senators said. Is I mean, as if he doesn't want to go against Caesar when when he was there.
Yeah, Pompey's he just seemed so like toothless especially like Pompey is the guy who doesn't realize that the change is coming and thinks that he's like the same. And we watch the Republic slowly collapse, you know what I mean, over the 3 books. And Pompey still thinks he has the same prestige that he had in book 1 by the time book 3 rolls around. And it's just he just doesn't. He let Caesar steal a march on him, basically. Kyle, what were your thoughts?
So firstly, this is maybe the only trilogy that I can think of where I read each book in a different method. Like I read the first book physically, the second book I did ebook, and then the third book I was going to do a mix of ebook and audio, but I just did the whole thing on audio.
Nice.
I wasn't super high on the audio narrator, so I do know that might play a bit into my perception, but this was clearly my least favorite. And it's not like I thought the book was bad. It just felt like, I don't remember who it was that said it on Discord. Maybe it was Nikki, but just that like he felt like he wanted to be done with it. And that's just like what I felt a lot of the time, because it felt like, you can't really help that Cicero lived the life that he did. Like he is a person and he lived. And if you're just not going to wildly change the ending, like in my review, I joked about like him challenging Caesar to a duel or whatever. Like if you're not going to go wildly different, you have to follow how Cicero's life went. And during this time, he's basically old man shakes his hand at cloud, right? And so you have to kind of work around that. It's a really hard challenge. And I just don't think Robert Harris did a good enough job for me. I think he needed another book. I think the first half of this book should have been a whole book, and then we needed a fourth. I don't really know. Like, I just felt like he chose to take on the life of Cicero, and knowing that the third act of Cicero's life is going to be less bombastic than the first 2, and I don't think he did enough creative challenges to get around that. But I am coming from somebody who knows this. Like, this is the period of Rome that a lot of people know the best, and I know it really well. And so I just knew all the stuff that was happening. So the moments where like it really went more introspective, like everything to do with Tullia was really good. Tiro actually, in the previous books, I thought Tiro didn't get enough time to be himself, and I thought that was the best improvement in this book, is that Tiro is more active in terms of his own life. But that was that replaced the fact that he didn't do anything in the plot in this book. He was just literally Areo Hotai from Game of Thrones, where he was just a camera for stuff happening. So I don't know. I just found a lot of it kind of boring, which is a shame. But so I was really glad that Anitha liked it, because I thought if you didn't know these events, because I just knew. I was like, oh yeah, Crassus is going to die now, and then they're going to do this. But if you didn't know that stuff, I could see being like, whoa, So
yeah, and yeah, that explains, Sal, if that's true, explains why Dictator came so much later after Conspirata. But yeah, like I think there is enough of Cicero in exile. We could have gotten like much more introspection and like quieter moments and stuff. It is a problem that Cicero is not front and center for a lot of the stuff that was happening here. Like, so he is a camera. Like, we can't get his, we can't see him interact because he's not interacting. Like, he's not there. Like, Cicero is a relic. He's the, they all shout his name. The tyrannicides shout his name when they kill Caesar, because he, at this point, since Cato is dead, he basically represents the old republic. Right. But other than that, like, he's in exile for several years. But I do think that we could have gotten a lot of out of it, like, especially for a 300-page novel. And, and then we also could have added with Tiro. I mean, Tiro's a person too. We could have had more with Atticus. And then post Caesar, we definitely had enough. Like, I personally did not get enough of
Octavian.
Yeah, well, enough of Cicero versus Antony. Like, that is a huge thing. Yeah. Cicero wrote 14 Philippics, 14 speeches he delivered against Mark Antony. Like, I thought it was going to be such a much bigger thing. And Fulvia, Antony's wife, like, she despises Cicero. Like, there was just so much more we could have done there. And, his, like, Octavian baits, and we saw this in Augustus, like, Octavian baits Cicero for much longer than we actually had in the book. And Octavian also fights to keep Cicero off the prescription lists initially. but Antony, Antony, it's a sine qua non. Like he's not like Antony's like Cicero is on this. I will give you all of these concessions. You just have to give me Cicero. And so we didn't really have any of that, and all of that could have been expanded. Into just like where it wasn't so many things happening quite so quickly.
I think if Mark Antony is like, I mean, I know people's lives don't work this way, but if you're structuring it into a narrative, Mark Antony is like his final villain, right?
Yeah.
And he loses to him ultimately, but like the books weren't structured in that way. So if you think about the villains throughout the series, right? Like you have Caesar is in direct opposition. You have Pompey is in like mostly direct opposition, but kind of half-assing it. Crassus, direct opposition. Then you have Clodius, who is like literally like trying to like actively ruin Cicero's life. And I knew going into this book that all of them were going to die, not having much to do with Cicero. So then the answer then becomes to like build up Antony is what my mind goes to, because Antony is like clearly the last like antagonist, and the book didn't really like do that. And I just feel like, okay, so here's so the show Better Call Saul is a prequel to Breaking Bad. And a lot of people know what's going to be happening to all of the like most of the major characters in Better Call Saul when they get to because they already read Breaking Bad. And so the way you make that interesting, you can't just be like, I'm doing a plot for plot thing. Like there's a very specific scene in that show, not spoiling anything, where a guy is hired to kill another guy. And we know both of these characters survive into Breaking Bad. And so the whole tension of the episode would then be not there. And so what they have to do is find a new way to make that interesting. And then they do it. And that is a creative challenge, right? Like you have to be like, okay, well, we know the audience knows what's going to happen here. So how do we make this interesting? And I feel like that's how Robert Harris had to have come at this. And I just think like he was constantly making me groan that he didn't make it more interesting. Like there's ways to make this interesting. And I was just like, oh yeah, things happened.
Yeah, I think post Caesar's death, Cicero is just kind of a like a raft in the current of events that is just kind of being carried along, as opposed to like actually facing up, like like having an antagonist like he had prior. And Sal, if I could only pick one, like I mean, yeah, like if it had to be a trilogy, I would have rather just had it end with Caesar's death. I
agree.
And even Cassius and Brutus, like that's the big thing that you said, Kyle. Brutus isn't even.
Oh yeah, it's wild. Like, that was wild.
Brutus.
He just shows up like for a second.
Yeah, and Harris ignores this, but there is evidence that Cicero knew of the plot against Caesar. Like he didn't join it. Like he refused to join it. But it is possible that Cicero knew what was going to happen, or at least knew that people were planning it, even if he didn't know when and where it was going to happen.
That would have been more interesting, I think.
Yeah, because I think like there are sources that say they approached Cicero about it, and he's like, no, because I mean that's that's who Cicero is. Like he's like, yeah, we're not gonna, like, we don't kill in politics, let's not do that. But like they did it anyway, and so he's like, oh, but I still love Cicero. And I do love one thing because I'm going to forget it. I love his return from exile, because when he steps off the boat from Brundisium and everyone is hailing like Cicero, it's such a circle from when,
the beginning.
Remember at the very beginning, when he stepped off the boat after being governor of Sicily and no one knew who he was. Like no one cared. So like it just came around and he got what he wanted 2 books ago, which is everyone, and he's enjoying it so much he didn't even see his daughter, on her birthday. Oh, Cicero. And that says so much about
him. Yeah.
Cicero.
Anitha, bring some positivity.
Yeah, sorry, Anitha. We're not trying to trash it.
Okay, I completely have a different opinion.
Yes.
See, I only know those main highlights. Like I know what will happen to Cicero. I know what will happen to Caesar. So after Caesar's death, actually, I wasn't. I thought immediately that prescription happens. I did not know, so much drama will happen between Cicero and Antony. So I was surprised, and actually, I was so shocked that Cicero was very happy and very involved after Caesar's assassination. Was like, okay, let's do this. I will drive you in the right path now. Why didn't you kill Antony too? I mean, he was.
So yeah, that's true. He did say that.
So I am not sure if he really know before planning, because if he knew, he would have planned better. I believed that, at least. And what second point I want to make? Okay, after his exile, his return. The one thing broke me in this book is Tullia, Cicero's daughters. Oh my God, it's so sad. Her life, her
Oh, yeah.
marriages, and I did not expect Cicero would marry 15-year-old girl.
I forgot about
You
that.
know
That
what?
he,
I did too, and I thought that whole section was kind of funny. Like I was just his like utter disapproval and distaste of the whole situation was pretty
Yeah.
funny. Which, like, I mean, I guess you'd have to, but you know,
yeah, I forgot that he marries that young girl, and then he's like, "Yeah, bye, leave. Like, we're divorced. See ya."
yeah. Anitha, what would you say was the most shocking point of the book for you? Because I know that you knew like the two biggest things.
Okay, my biggest shocking point was Cicero's happiness after Caesar's assassination. I did not expect that he would be like, "Yay, it happened." I did not expect that. I thought, I, I mean, he may not maintain a distance from them, but he was in jubilation. That was my shocking point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like Bridget. You're absolutely like. This is what I teach in my classes is like, if you read this stuff in books, you'd be like, okay, like plot armor. Why doesn't this person die? Or that would never happen. This crap happens in real, like these are real people who did this ridiculous crap, and it would be unbelievable in an actual fiction novel. People would be like, that's lazy, hack writing.
What Bridget just said was the thing that I didn't know. Like that was really shocking to me. Like
Yes.
I was like, what, really?
Yeah.
I thought he made that up until somebody asked in the Discord.
He killed his own father, so that's not surprising at all. Even Cicero laughed at that irony.
Yeah. Yeah. It's it's and Cicero does stop running when he's there. He's like, well, like let's make it as not terrible as possible. And then they cut off his hands and head, and they put him in the friggin' forum. And Fulvia takes her hat pin or hairpins and like pokes his tongue because of all the freaking bad things he said about like the stuff he said about Fulvia. Remember the Clodia trial, and apply that crap to Fulvia. Like he flat out accused her of murdering both of her husbands prior to Antony. He calls her a trollop. Like all kinds of stuff. Cicero is like does not pull punches when he's trying to take someone down. And so Fulvia had every reason to hate him, in addition to the fact that he wrote and delivered 14 speeches against Mark Antony. So she despised Cicero. So that makes it even more like she's like, I hate this guy. So what? Sorry, go ahead.
Kyle said that Breaking Bad and Better, that was actually a great analogy. I watched both of those shows. Though I knew what happened to Cicero, I still felt the tension. Maybe because I did not know how
you got
come
there,
to that point when they're running away in that boat. I still felt that tension. Maybe that's the reason I liked it actually more than the first two books. This book, actually, I loved Harris writing, the way he made me invested. Oh my God, I don't know actually that Republic was good or not, what they did for people, but I wanted to save that Republic.
Yeah.
It felt like the Romans are losing their democracy.
Yeah, and it's like it's such a struggle for like people like me and probably Kyle too, because usually we're on Caesar's side because the Republic was infested with corruption. Like it didn't work anymore because of the people, like those families that were surrounding Pompey, like Lucullus sitting on his immense freaking like estate and wealth while everyone else freaking like the Republic didn't work anymore. And Caesar was trying to fix that while also, accumulating as much power for himself too, because he's like, well, we have to break it to fix it. Compare that with Cato, who also knew it was corrupt. And we saw Cato's attempts to purge corruption at every turn. But Cato believed the system was fixable. Caesar believed we had to break it and rebuild it. And that is why they were like complete, like polar opposites.
That's excellent, Alan. I've never thought of it that way, but that's 100%. Yeah. One of them thought it was fixable, and one of them thought they had to break it. Yeah, absolutely.
And so it's really hard to watch because I'm with you, Anitha. I want the Republic to be saved here. But normally I'm like, these pieces of trash, freaking senators, like, tear it down, Caesar. And these books just tore me. Like, I was pulled in too. And so I think Harris does a really good job of making the aristocracy sympathetic. People like freaking Catullus and Hortensius. Why do I feel bad for them? I hate them. But
I mean, the way the way Caesar made that guy knelt. Oh my God, that was horrible. I mean, I cannot believe he did that. I mean, Caesar's, what is that? Animosity with these people. I did not understand where it came from.
They hated him. Like, they hated him because he was a populist and wanted to tear all that stuff down. And he was a Marian. The Senate hates Marius because Marius is the one that let the poor people prosper by letting them in the army, which they weren't allowed in before because they couldn't afford their equipment. So, I mean, Caesar was a rabble rouser, and he always cast his lot with people like Clodius Pulcher, who we'll talk about in a minute, because I teach Clodius Pulcher as like, kind of a lovable rogue, but a little bit of a brute.
He was straight evil in this.
Straight up gang leader, straight up 100% thug. But I love, like, what I do like about the pace in book 3 is, like, things go very fast and begin unraveling, and everything happens very quickly because all of the rules and decorum have been thrown away. Book 1 is very slow and very methodical because we have all of these policies and procedures in place. Right. The Constitution is there, and everything is done through, like, rule of law, and this, like, one thing directly leads to another. Like, I've got to give this speech because the rules say that, we've got to take a break after this, whatever. And then it starts to unravel in the second book. And then by book 3, none of that is there. We have no policy, no procedure. Like, the pace of it mirrors, like, the crumbling of the infrastructure.
That's true.
Maybe we just needed, like, a second perspective. Like, if Tiro is just like, also, hither be known, I have Marcus Agrippa's, side of this that I just dusted off, like something like that. And then, because one thing, I didn't need this because I already knew the tactics and stuff, but it just felt like Cicero didn't know anything about what was going on, that it was just like, oh yeah, Crassus died. Oh yeah, now that's all done. Oh, also Pompey's lost. Like, it's just like, and I don't even think we needed, like, I don't think it would have worked really if somebody was like, so here's the play by, like, that would have been very boring. But like the way that it worked, it was just like, oh, now this major character is just gone.
Yeah.
And I don't know how you solve for that. Like, it's a very hard problem to solve for. Like, I didn't even hold that against them. I was just like, oh man, like, I wish there was more, because, like, what was even the last time Crassus and Cicero talked, like, was there, I don't even remember when that was now.
I think it was before exile.
Yeah.
No, maybe I'm thinking he's like the last time he ever talked to Caesar. Yeah, it must have been the second book then.
No, I think after exile, when Cicero comes back, he talks something against Caesar about that land policy. Crassus immediately leaves to talk to Caesar at that. I think that was the last point they talked.
Yeah, because Crassus dies in 53 at Carrhae. I think it's 53. And Crassus, that's the one, like, Harris does do a good job explaining what Crassus' freaking deal is the one thing he can't buy is what? He said respect, like the respect of the soldiers. Like, he can't buy that. Like, you have to win battles. And he finally gets his commission, and it's against Rome's, like, most feared enemy. Like, the Parthians stay unconquered for forever. Augustus has to make peace with them.
Real quick, because I just remember this now, and this is the only time I'll ever have a chance. So when Crassus goes out to Parthia, and then he gets killed, his son gets killed, a bunch of his soldiers get stranded there. There's a book I really want to read called The Eagle and the Dragon. It's a historical fiction, or it's a historical like it's historical fiction, but it's like not based on real events, where the people from like Crassus's legion have kids there, like they're trapped in Parthia, they have kids or whatever, and they still like maintain a military force, and then they meet people from China, and it's like a meeting of the two worlds. It's I really want to read it, and that just reminded me of it right now. Is Crassus's descendants.
That's cool. I literally just clicked one to read on that. I just added to my Goodreads. That's awesome. Anyway.
Also, to talk about some positives, I really liked the end of the book. The last chapter was really, really good. The way Cicero died was really good, and the way it was written. And then like I forget the line now, but the way that Tiro wrote the line, where it was like when his throat was cut, and he was like, and his story was finished. Like I don't remember what the line was, but the last line of Cicero's life was really good. And also, I didn't know Quintus got executed too. Like I never knew that. So I was like, oh,
and
no,
his
not
son
Quintus.
too. And it was
I know. I was like,
that was very sad.
I thought Quintus escaped the executions. I don't know why I thought that.
So, wait, said Cicero, leave me where I am. I haven't in mind to die this way. He propped himself up on his elbows like a defeated gladiator, threw back his head, and offered his throat to the sky. If that's what you want, said Popilius. He turned to his centurion. Let's get this over with. The centurion took a position. He braced his legs. He swung his sword. The blade flashed, and in that instance, for Cicero, the mystery that had plagued him all his life was solved, and liberty was extinguished from the earth. Oh, that's so good.
I love that. That is so good. And that's the kind of Robert Harris is such a good writer. Like he wrote the hell out of this book. Like technically speaking, I had no issues with it. I thought his prose was still really good. It was very readable. All of my issues were just narratively. And like it was moments like that, and like the stuff surrounding Tullia, where I was just like, man, Robert Harris can really, really write. Like he got a lot of emotion from me out of that scene.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Especially in this book, right from the first page. In the first page, when Cicero was going into exile, when his friends were betraying him, from there itself, Harris' writing was so good. And yes, Cicero's son survived, and this is where this is why I did not hate Terentia. Actually, she was able to save her son and her money because of her betraying. She looked after herself. So yes, I cried for Cicero, but I appreciated her foresight.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, he definitely survived. He fights in Augustus's Octavian's army, or he fights in those wars. But hold on, I forgot what I was going to say. I don't know. I agree. I think the writing is fantastic. And Quintus and like, is this the book where Quintus like basically says "F you" to Cicero and says like I'm so freaking sick of living your life. Like, this is well documented. Like Quintus's like inferiority complex he has to Cicero. But imagine that. Imagine that Cicero is your older brother, right? Like nothing you do, like you can't get out of that shadow. Like you can't. Cicero was at one time the most important person in the city, and Quintus is here being basically mid to competent at anything that he tries his hand at. He's a middling general. He's a bad politician. He's no wonder he's freaking angry all the time.
And to add salt to the injury, Cicero took his money and settled his own debts. That was actually he shouldn't have done that. I felt bad for Quintus, but unfortunately for him, his plan would have worked. He wrote to Caesar. His plan would have worked, but Caesar respects Cicero more. That's why he did not take back Quintus.
Yeah. And freaking Caesar. Like, Caesar in this book is just so, at this point, just kind of above everything. And, like, I don't really understand Caesar in this book. I don't know. I think that Caesar at some point, like, I think he is power hungry, but I think at some point, like, when we had the Civil War, I think post-Civil War Caesar is bad. Like, I don't even support really post-Civil War Caesar. Like, you're invading your country, bro. And I get that you don't like the fact that they won't let you run for consul, but come on. And then, he sits in a golden throne. Like, dude, get off the throne, And Antony offers him the crown 3 times so he can be like, no, no, no. It's widely believed that was staged and that Caesar had it be offered to see how the people would react, but they reacted poorly because they don't want a king. So he's like, oh, no, 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 I can't. Like that's something that be well within Caesar's playbook. Like, he just kind of goes out and like just kind of loses it for me.
It reminds me a lot of Cao Cao. Not to get too far into different things, but so in the Three Kingdoms era, Cao Cao's a political warlord, and he basically becomes emperor, but he doesn't actually become emperor because he's a loyal Han servant, and he's never going to do the thing. So people are like, Cao Cao, why don't you become emperor? And he's like, that's how I would, how dare. And then the minute Cao Cao dies, his son is like, well, I guess I'll become emperor. So it's like, that's almost the exact same thing that happened with Caesar.
It's
freaking.
Like,
it's just a thing that power hungry people try and do.
Yeah, it's Toranaga. No, I don't want to be shogun. Like, how dare you suggest I'm shogun?
Guess I'll be shogun.
Yeah, exactly. First citizen. Well, Augustus is a better politician than Caesar will ever be. And Augustus makes the Senate and the Republic think that they still have their republic.
Yeah,
and Augustus is incredible. Like I understand, like just his sheer. Like, if Augustus, I don't think people understand. I did like several essays on Augustus, so I really like him. I know a lot about him. But the thing about Augustus that really just gets me is that he just outlived anybody that would remember how things used to be. Like, if Augustus's reign was half as long as it was, they would have went right back to the Republic. They would have just been like, some of these like younger senators would just be an old senator, and they'll just be like, no, we're going back. But he's like, I'm gonna reign forever, and like he was just an excellent politician the whole time.
That was also a surprise for me, because in Augustus by John Williams, we barely got a couple of letters between Cicero and Augustus, so I did not expect that much communication and collaboration between them. In this book, actually, we got more letters between them. We got more detail what happened between them, and I'm not sure. Maybe, as Alan said, maybe Harris did not cover more of Augustus trying to save Cicero. It in both that Augustus by John Williams and this book both just mentioned that Augustus did not want that, but Antony insisted. But I wish we got
allegedly.
Yeah.
Yeah, allegedly they argued about it for 2 days.
Yeah.
I wish we got more details on that.
Yeah.
For sure. And Kyle, it's ironic. Augustus's long reign is ironic because he was the sickly child. Like, he's the one that had the crap constitution and the nervous disorder that always laid him out when there's going to be a battle. Like, freaking at Actium, he's laying on his back having a freaking nervous breakdown on the beach because he's so worried about losing. Like, I hate Augustus as a person, but he is one of the most brilliant politicians like that has ever lived. Like,
absolutely,
he might as well have invented the game. He's so good at it, but I hate him because he's just such a snake. Like, he hates the Senate for opposing Caesar until the people who killed Caesar are dead, and then all of a sudden he's on the people who hated Caesar's side. He allies with the Caesar name until it's no longer politically expedient to do so, and then he curses. He's like distances himself from the Caesar name. So that's not always my favorite thing. It's like, you traitor! Like, have some loyalty, Augustus.
Yeah, he's like opposite of Cicero. I feel that's why Cicero could not gel with him much.
Yeah. So I don't know about that, Sal. Like Augustus did argue very, very strongly to not have Cicero killed. Now, we don't know the motivations behind that. Is it because he just, wanted Uncle Cicero to live? Probably not. Augustus was, like a world-class politician. So it probably was like, because he's like, if Cicero gets killed, like, it's going to piss off these people. Or like there was probably, 7 steps to it. But I don't think you would argue that fervently for somebody to live when you're killing a lot of other people. Like, if you're just like bloodbathing everything and you're like, but I really want Cicero to live. it does suggest he had some sort of fondness or at least use for Cicero, but we don't know for sure. Like it could have just been a political thing. But
yeah, I think. Sorry, go ahead.
This was the most shocking thing to me. I don't know what exactly happened. If this is the way it happened. I mean, Antony and Augustus want. I mean, that other guy. They want to pay their soldiers, so they decide to kill 2,000 wealthy men. Oh my God, that was mind blowing.
That happened more often than you think it did. Like when the people in charge need cash, you just kill or exile the people who have it, and you confiscate it. So
it's like you shouldn't be rich in Rome. It's dangerous for you to be rich in Rome.
So this comment here, like Augustus, I think Augustus was too good at the game to take things like personally, like to really like, nurse like that kind of a petty grudge. And Cicero's been around, like people understand this is who Cicero is. Like he is an arrogant blowhard in a lot of aspects, but like I don't think it's a far reach to say that Augustus probably respected Cicero for like he is, for who Cicero was and who Cicero is. In addition, Cicero being an ally lends him legitimacy in a lot of camps, not necessarily the Caesarian camps, but he's already got the Caesarians because he's Caesar's heir. So he's got a lot of the Caesarians as it is. And, Cicero could be a bridge to this. So, like, I don't think it's just like, I think you're probably right, Kyle and Sal. Like, I'm sure there was some use for him. It's not just fondness, but I think he also probably respected Cicero and certainly didn't want a man like Cicero to die on a bounty list,
I think Caesar really respected Cicero. He must have talked to Augustus about, how much he respects Cicero. That also might have made impact.
Yeah. Also, Cicero is a fantastic piece in his war against Antony. Like, hey, keep writing Philippics, Cicero. Go. Like, write some more. 14's not enough. Keep going. Praise, raised, and erased.
That's some like Hamilton stuff where he's like, he's destroyed the only other significant member of his party.
Yeah. Yes. Oh man, why does Cicero say things like praise, raised, and erased though? Come on, Cicero, what are you doing?
Cicero has no chill.
No, he does not. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to talk about random stuff.
Oh, I was going to bring us back to the beginning with, like, especially you, Anitha, like, what did you think of Clodius Pulcher's literal reign of terror, where he takes over the forum by piling up all this crap in front of the temple and, has his just gangs roving around, beating the trash out of anybody who, like, is a political enemy? Like, it was freaking, like, Rome was gangs of New York at the time. Like, he's like literal gang wars with freaking Milo out there with his, with his gladiators or whatever. What do you think of all that, Anitha?
Clodius Pulcher is a perfect lesson to any politician, even now in recent times. That's what happens if you rabble rouse, that crowd for your own use. But you cannot stop there. Actually, you will lose control of that crowd, and it will go beyond where even you cannot stop. Oh my God, I hated him so much.
I hate Pulcher.
Oh God, he was. I hated Cicero. Caesar for putting him on that platform. Oh my God, he shouldn't have gotten that. What is his role? Tribune.
Tribune.
Oh
yeah.
God.
Oh, that whole thing was wild.
Caesar letting him be adopted by a guy younger than him, so he can be a
And none of the senators have that courage to go against him. Unfortunately, even Cato has to leave the. Even Cato has to leave for another. I don't know.
He has to go to Cyprus because the king of Cyprus. So Pulcher gets kidnapped by pirates and has enough money because he's from a wealthy family. He's a freaking Claudian, but he demands that the king of Cyprus pay his ransom because he's off the coast of Cyprus. And the king of Cyprus is like, no. And so Pulcher, who is the opposite of Augustus in grudge nursing, literally nurses that grudge for 2 years and then decides to annex the dude's province and gets Cato out of the city for 2 years. So like he annexes the country because the dude wouldn't pay his ransom. Like Pulcher's the worst. He's just awful.
I didn't know that. Like all that story. Yeah,
He's such a douchebag.
Oh my god. I think I hate him, I don't know, more than Pompey at some point.
But remember, like
Pompey's at least very competent. Like I respect competency. Like I know, like towards the end, I mean, like, but Pompey like gets to be that way because he succeeds for a long time.
Yeah.
So it's like even though I find him to be a douche, like I'm like okay, you know, it's one of those things where it's like you can be a douche, you can be incompetent, but you can't be an incompetent douche.
Correct. But the thing is, remember that isn't Cicero the one that provoked Caesar into into Pulcher being allowed to become a pleb? Like Cicero, many of these are problems of his own making. Like if he would just have some chill, like Kyle says, like if he just have a little bit of chill, he could have avoided maybe some of this.
If he didn't kill Sura, you know, Anthony would have left him off the kill list. So
yeah. Oh yeah, which is because that's Anthony's stepdad, right?
Yeah.
And this is also the book where Cicero like goes ham on Clodia, right?
Yeah.
This is the.
I thought that was the second. Was that this book?
This one.
You read it more recently. Okay,
exile.
I believe you.
After
I believe
his
you.
exile.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Oh,
man.
I know. I remember. Okay. Yeah.
His public excoriation of Clodia is just one true because we have the speeches. Two, man, Cicero is mean when he needs to be.
He was wilding about Clodia.
Yeah,
I mean I did not feel good actually, though she deserves it.
To be fair though, he went after her because she went after his wife. Like it's Cicero justifies it as payment in kind for Terentius treatment. So like I give him some leeway for that, but man, he took her to task and embarrassing like both her and Clodius. Like he does in fact. Yeah, it is hard not to feel bad for Clodia, even though she is terrible. I hate Clodia also. I hate her and her brother. I hate them both. And yeah, the relevance for this, absolutely. And the fact that there's a freaking play, there's a 2-part play of this series.
That sounds awesome.
The freaking Royal Shakespeare Company performed it, and there's no videos of it. And I'm angry. Oh my gosh.
Guess you'll have to go see it when I put it on next.
So much money to watch that show. That would be absolutely amazing. Yeah, you would.
I would be friends with Marcus Agrippa, who's not really in this book. But
Agrippa's amazing.
I want to talk about Cato a bit. I really liked him actually. You know, after Cato comes back from Cyprus, everyone was scared to stand up to Caesar. Caesar wasn't even there in Senate. He was fighting somewhere in Gaul. But even Cicero did not stand up to fight. But Cato was the only one who stood his ground. And that was actually, I respected him a lot there. You know, at the end, when Caesar comes back, when Cato chooses to go to Africa, gather army and fight Caesar, I did feel like maybe it's not, maybe he doesn't have survival instinct, maybe he should make peace, but I still respected Cato.
Yeah, Cato he's the hero of this book. Like
literally everything he does in this book, I was like cheering. I was like, absolutely.
Yeah,
he never compromised on his principles. I respect a lot of that.
Cato really was incorruptible. He liked to gamble and he liked to drink, but other than that, he couldn't be bribed. Like he couldn't be bought. He'd be like, no, and I'm gonna prosecute you. Like him sitting in the Senate, like just listening, going over line item of the treasury to find out like who's been embezzling or who's been stealing money from the government. Like, I love that. Like, he's like, yeah, well, we've been ignoring this, so let me go ahead and do the job that all of you quaestors should have been doing before me. I freaking love Cato. He acts like an old man, and he's 5 years younger than Caesar, but he acts like he's 80, which is probably why in the
Yeah,
Rome
I was
show,
just
they make
gonna
him so
say
old.
he's like a 75-year-old dude.
Yeah. I love Cato.
Now you guys need to read the Con of Golden series because it's an interesting juxtaposition to all this because it's from Caesar's perspective, and Cato is like the main villain of like the second or third one. I don't know, maybe the third one, and he's just not. I mean, I read those books. Like those were like not quite, but almost my introduction to Roman history. Like it was like when I really didn't know that much. And Cato was like, wow, this guy's like a jerk. Like I don't like him at all. He's very distasteful. And then I was like, oh, this. But it's interesting because that's how I feel about Caesar in this trilogy. Is that like, he's the worst. Also, an interesting parallel to that series is that Golden wrote the first 4 about Caesar, and then Caesar got assassinated, and then he finished the series, and he started writing like a War of the Roses series, or whatever. And then he had 1 book left on his contract with that publisher, so he went back and decided to write a book, or he started writing the Conqueror series. So he went back and wrote 1 more book for that publisher, and he just decided to make it from Augustus's point of view. So it was like a 5th book, and I did not like that book at all for a lot of reasons. But it was covering basically this time period and then like a little bit further. But what's funny about that is it does the same thing this book does, but just on the opposite way, where like Cicero is a major supporting character in the first 4 books, and then in the 5th book, he's just literally not in it at all. And then like Mark Antony and Augustus like have that little sit down about who to kill, and the line is like they argued for a day about who to kill and who not to kill, and then they put the list up. Like they didn't even mention that he killed this major character. I was like, what? You didn't mention that he had Cicero killed? So that was wild.
That's weird.
But the first 4 books in that series are really good.
I have never, like, Shakespeare does the best of making Antony palatable, but other
Antony
than like
sucks always.
Yeah, other than like Antony in basically other than Damian Lewis as Mark Antony in Shakespeare's Julius Caesar, I hate him in everything. Like I am never on Antony's side, like ever. Like I hate him. Like
Sal, how is Mark Antony in Masters of Rome?
Yes, tell us, Sal.
I don't think it's possible to make. What's interesting is that people romanticize him just because of the Cleopatra stuff, but like, man, that guy just doesn't do anything good.
No, he's a dumb. He is an idiot in the Masters of Rome.
Part of the chorus.
That's hilarious. Yeah, it is. I freaking hate Antony. But yeah, I love Cato in this. Do they say that in this book that Cato committed suicide twice?
Yeah.
They mentioned that he did it twice. Okay, yeah. they sew his guts back up, and then he wakes up and is angry that they brought him back to life. So he pulls the stitches out and pulls his guts out again. Like that dude is hard. Like he is so hardcore.
I just assumed that wasn't real.
No, it's totally real.
What a guy.
My kid.
He doesn't want an easy death. Oh my god. Such a tool, actually.
Yeah, for sure. He's. Oh, okay. He's loyal to Caesar.
Antony.
Whatever. Stupid Antony. Like, suck it. Go get drunk some more. I hate Antony.
In this book, actually, sorry, Ellen, for interrupting.
No,
In this book, it was mentioned that Brutus doesn't like Pompey because Pompey killed his father. I did not remember in second book. I remember Cerilia's husband being dead, but did Pompey kill him?
If he did, it was in the Civil War, probably.
I just don't think it was mentioned in the second book.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think it was just a thing that they're like, and here you go.
Matthew, you haven't taken Latin 2 yet. Like I haven't done the Caesar lecture yet. Everyone else loves Cato except for you.
Zato sounds like a Pokemon.
Zato.
That like psychic bird, you know?
Yeah. I think isn't it like Zapdos?
No, you're thinking of the electric bird.
Oh.
I'm thinking it's like Xantu or something. Zato, I don't know, but it's like a little penguin thing.
That's right. Of course you do. Yeah, there are people that hate Cato because he's anti-Caesar. But yeah, so I mean, I like this book more talking about it. Really, I like the history behind it.
Yeah, that's what I like. I still maintain. I mean, the book was fine. It was fine.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm really glad Anitha loved it.
Good. I just didn't like it as much as books 1 and 2 personally.
Yeah, like I don't regret reading it. Like I wasn't unenjoying my time. It was mostly like the failed potential that I saw. You know, like that was what really got me.
Yeah, for sure. Any other thoughts, Anitha?
I think that's all. I mean, I don't know many details, but when Caesar wants to be consul, when Pompey finally was like, no, I mean, he takes that entire army and comes out of Rome. That was one of the shocking points to me. I wasn't really expecting Caesar attacking Rome. I mean, I was like, really? Why people love Caesar? I mean, I really did not know that he attacked Rome and Romans.
Yeah. And a lot of people were not super cool with like fighting, other Romans. Fighting, like murdering Gauls is one thing. They're savage and aren't civilized. The Romans don't care about them. But like fighting like other Romans, that
was a big deal. That's why we use that phrase, crossing the Rubicon. Like, there's no going back.
It was a huge deal. Yeah.
Sell whatever Alan reads next.
Yeah, so I was gonna say actually, Anitha, what are you most interested to read again, like or read next in Roman? Like it could be like hundreds of years later. It could be like a part of this that you feel like you didn't get enough about. Like what is, if you could read literally anything Roman related, what would that era or time be?
Okay, if it's not Harris, then I'm okay with continuing what happened after Augustus. After what happened at the end of Augustus by John Williams, because until then, at least I know some part of history.
So you don't want to go backwards?
If I'm not familiar to go backwards, right, at least, I mean, I have heard
forward,
of these names after. Yeah.
There are very few, like even nonfiction about Tiberius and Caligula. There's not a ton about.
There should be more about Caligula, because I think Caligula gets an unfair rap. Like, I mean, he was crazy, but he clearly had like a disease.
Yeah, well, he was also wildly popular at the beginning of his reign. But the problem is, I think the problem with Caligula is he only ruled for 4 years. So he wasn't emperor very long. And Tiberius, I don't know why there's not more fiction about Tiberius, because that man, that's easy to write. Like, what a dour.
Yeah, maybe I'll try and look up some.
Yeah, like what a dour,
Tiberius was
paranoid freak.
He was a freak.
Same Tiberius of Augustus' stepson.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So he became emperor and became very paranoid. It was very crazy. But he had like villas, and he, like in his old age, would invite boys over he would call them Tiberius's minnows, and he would have them swim naked through his legs. Like,
he was the first few years of Tiberius's reign was really good, and then like he just went. I actually think he went crazy. Like, not like to be like, oh, he just.
It didn't help that
his reservation,
like his literally chief of bodyguard, conspired with his wife to murder him and take over the government. And after that, after Sejanus, like something snapped. Like something snapped, because he.
Yeah, that's the exact time.
Yeah, he went insane.
Who is the emperor in Gladiator movie? Is that fictional?
That's Commodus.
That's Commodus, and Commodus does suck.
Yeah.
I mean, so Caligula. So a lot of the Roman, the common Roman emperors that people say suck, it's not that they don't suck. It's that there's a lot of mitigating circumstances. Like Nero, a lot of people say is bad. Nero had more good to him than people point out. Like he was very mixed.
First 5 years.
Yeah, he did some good stuff, and then he just. And then like fiddling while Rome burned is like the thing always people associate with Nero, which is not really true. And then Caligula too, like he didn't rule for very long. He was he did try to make his horse a consul, but that was kind of like a joke, or we think it was a joke, and we think he probably had a disease. But Commodus sucked. There's nothing else to say about him besides Commodus sucked.
There's nothing redeeming about Commodus.
Yeah, Commodus absolutely.
It can be argued that Commodus set the empire on its decline. Yep. Like he was
absolutely. He was the start of the end of the empire, for sure.
Yeah.
Nero, like
Go ahead.
Diocletian and stuff, like, you know, they brought it back a little, but that was the first nail in the coffin.
Yeah.
There.
Nero, I mean, Nero's first years were good because he was advised by Seneca and Burrus, like who were both very wise. Like, and he was young, and so he had really good advisors. So he ruled wisely and well for 5 years. But then his mom got really upset that she wasn't like the power, so she had both Seneca and frickin' Burrus like arranged to get gone. And
his mom
after
was a card.
his mom was crazy also. So after that, Nero goes downhill because, you know, whatever. But yeah, but Claudius ruled for a long time and ruled wisely and well. Now he was a bit of a, I mean, he really liked watching violent spectacles in the not the Colosseum, but in amphitheaters. Like, he really liked watching violence, and he had his own vices. But he was very, very intelligent, and he ruled for a long time.
Claudius.
Yeah, and conquered Britain, you know.
We'll read I Claudius next whenever we all have available time to buddy read. Just so you have a time, place, Anitha. So at the end of Augustus, Tiberius becomes emperor, and then it should have been Germanicus. Germanicus was all just ready to go to be a great emperor, and then Germanicus died early, and then Germanicus's son is Caligula. He's also named Germanicus, and he's emperor for 4 years. It's terrible. There's a big coup. And then Claudius becomes emperor. So it's 2 emperors later. It's like 30 years later, maybe 25.
Yeah,
I don't know the
Tiberius
exact timeline.
rules for 25 years.
Yeah, so it'll be about 30 years after the end of Augustus, and that's probably, I'll maybe try and find some Augustus stuff, but that's probably the next available.
Yeah. But yeah, for sure. Like, it's just a fascinating period, and like, I wish there was more historical fiction about these lesser known stuff. I know there's some historical fiction about Vespasian, but I don't think it's very accurate.
Robert Fabry thing.
Yeah, where he starts as like a soldier and stuff. I don't know. Anyway, any other thoughts about Dictator here? I think
why do you call it Dictator but then switch to Dictator right after?
Because Dictator is the Latin pronunciation. That's how I pronounce it in class. I just forget.
Last night I was at trivia, and somebody that I was with said Tolkien, and then like played it off like token, and I was like, listen, I wouldn't normally correct you, but we're being nerds. So while we're being nerds, it's Tolkien. But then I immediately went right back into saying Tolkien because that's how I talk about it. So it's like that's the exact same thing. Where it's like I know the way, but I just don't do it.
Yeah, I say Tolkien. Like, I also know it's Tolkien, but it's Tolkien. JR, because that's how I pronounced it before the internet exists.
Yeah,
when you could learn how to pronounce things. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, Tolkien. What about you, Anitha? Final thoughts on Cicero? What about thoughts as a trilogy? Let's close it by talking about the trilogy, just in and of itself. Like, recommend to people? Yes, no?
You know, best political thriller. Even more than any contemporary political thrillers, this is the best actually. If you are entering politics, read this trilogy, or if you are into historical fiction, read this trilogy. I'm planning to do a review of it. I don't know anything about Roman history. My perspective on these events, on Caesar, what he did, on Cicero. So, I'm going to recommend. I think maybe this is my favorite historical fiction.
That's awesome.
Loved it.
Like, this is so accurate and so well written that I would recommend this to people who are looking for nonfiction, or are looking for more info about Cicero and the time period. Like,
I agree.
It's because it's mostly as accurate as a nonfiction book, but in a much more narratively like interesting way than most people would find, like just straight up historical accounts. It's just so good. Like, it's really.
Is there
really
anything
good.
Harris added?
Not that I know. I mean,
I
a lot
know
of the conversations are made up. But
I want to say one last thing. I like that Tiro got to meet that Agate finally at the end.
I was just
Oh,
gonna
yeah,
say
yeah.
my thing was that we didn't discuss the narrator of the book at all, and I was gonna bring us back to that for a couple
Oh,
minutes.
please bring us
Yeah.
back to Tiro.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
I
Yeah,
mean,
no, I forgot to until right now. Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing. I did really like that he got his happy ending. I mean, if I'm gonna throw a little bit of hands, for him to just randomly come upon this random woman in
He
another
probably
city.
made that up.
I'm just like, okay, man, whatever.
Yeah.
But it was worth it because I wanted Tiro to be happy. So I was like,
Sure,
you know,
sure.
yeah.
I
also
did
I
like
like
how
that.
he was freed in the middle of this book. Like,
Yes.
I'd forgotten that. It's just like, oh, okay. And then I was like, how are you gonna have the rest of the book now that you're on the farm, Tiro? And then of course, he's like, well, I gotta go. I gotta help my buddy. So
Yeah.
This is very small thing, but I like that, that Agate was independent and she is running her own
no
bathhouse.
baths. Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was awesome.
Yeah, that was nice.
that was really
that was a
cool.
good touch. I also like the conversation Tiro and Cicero had when he finally just asks him, he's like, why didn't you free me earlier? And Cicero's like pretty honest. He's like, honestly, I was just afraid that you'd leave me and I need you.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's not a good reason at all to keep a person enslaved, Cicero, but it is very human to be like, I was really afraid that you would leave me. So I thought that was a really nice conversation.
Yeah, it was like, they have several good conversations in this, especially in Exile or when he's writing his philosophical treatises about death or whatever. And I like.
Think about?
Go ahead.
Go ahead. What did you think about Atticus loaning Fulvia money and saving his skin?
Oh, look, I love Atticus. He is one of the rare men like Maecenas who never wanted to be a senator. Dude didn't want to be in politics. Like, he just wanted to host dinner parties, travel around, have some good times with a friend. He doesn't want to be put on the spot. He doesn't want to choose sides. He just wants to get along with everybody. And he's so chill. Cicero yells at him all the time. And Atticus is just like, yeah, well, how Atticus is a saint for putting up with all Cicero's nonsense, but bless Atticus, because without Atticus saving those letters, we would not know nearly as much about Cicero. The fact that he didn't throw any of Cicero's letters away.
But I thought he burned his whatever. I mean, he took those letters from Tiro and he burned all where his letters were there, where his name was referenced.
Yes. So he burned those because he did not want to be, named in this stuff. But most of Cicero's letters he saved. The ones that are innocuous, that aren't gonna pin that Octavian can't use to pin some kind of political crime on him. You know what I mean? So the innocuous ones where Cicero's talking about oh, I miss my dog, and oh, I love my daughter, and my daughter's husband's a dummy, or I think I'm gonna run for consul because I'm the bee's knees. Those are fine, So
he's very really smart. Actually, he found a way to survive. Actually, he planned ahead for his survival.
Yeah, I was just gonna say it's really interesting that this isn't just for this. I think about this too, and people are talking about George Washington's letters and stuff, and I'm just like, can you imagine just keeping the letters and then just those are important to history, if somebody wrote me a letter and I'm just I'm gonna keep it in here because maybe they'll be real important later. That's just just such a wild concept to me.
Yeah.
It's just really interesting. And Cicero wrote tons of people letters, and it just happened to be Atticus that saved a bunch of them, right?
Yeah. Yes, it's so good. It's so good. This whole thing's so good, and I love Tiro. I love Tiro in this.
My final thoughts on the trilogy are that it's awesome, and it is now maybe my go-to recommendation for good Roman historical fiction.
Cool.
Because Roman historical fiction, and I have not read that much of it, but what I've read, it's really focused on battles. And it's not that I don't like battles, it's just that I think there's more to it than that. And I get why, because the Roman military was very good, and they just always fought. So I get it, but I feel like people would a lot of people would like this that think they wouldn't like it, and I wouldn't always say that. There's a lot I really like Ben Kane's novels. I almost never talk about Ben Kane, not because I don't like him. It's just that it's a very specific niche. You have to like Roman historical fiction, military fiction, and and he's really good at it, and they're good books, and I just never really recommend them unless somebody's looking for that. But I do think a lot of people that wouldn't really pick this up would really like it. Like if they actually gave it a shot, the dialogue is really funny. It's very relatable and modern, and the characters are just all time. And like Anitha, like learned so much about this period, and I just really fight and push against the idea that history is boring. Like I know nobody here thinks that, but like so many people think that they're just like, oh, I don't really read, Roman historical fiction, or like I don't really like history or whatever it might be. But it's because you just sit in the class and they tell you, in the Ides of March, they told Cicero or they told Caesar not to, and then you're just like, okay, that's boring. But so this is excellent. I know that I had my criticisms of this third one, but I would recommend this trilogy to most people.
I am actually glad I got to read this political side of Roman history, because I don't think if I had read military side of it, I would enjoy this much, because I am not invested in their cause actually. Why are you going and attacking Gaul? You have no reason to it, at least from my point of view. I'm not invested in that in their cause. So I'm glad I got to read political side of it.
Well, that's the pitfall that people make when teaching history a lot of times, is ignoring the human element. Like you can't care about what happened unless you care about the people it happened to. You know what I mean? Like a lot of historical fiction, like doesn't focus on the characters. Like, yeah, these are people, but they're freaking characters. Like let us care about their cause, like what you're saying, and then we'll care about the outcome of the battle. You know what I mean? So I don't know. Like,
I highly recommend to anybody, especially Anitha, because I'm talking directly to her, but anybody listening to this that wants to know more about this period, Dan Carlin's Hardcore History. It's a podcast series. He does really deep dives into all sorts of subjects. Like, I recommend that. Every episode of that podcast is a banger, but there's one episode that's like a standalone that's called The Celtic Holocaust, and it goes really, really deep into Caesar's conquest of Gaul and the terrible shit that happened there. Sorry, terrible stuff that happened there. But also just like how much of a military genius Caesar was. And that is very long. It's like a 6-hour episode. So like you don't just like dip into it, but it is very, very good. And I highly recommend it.
What?
Also, yes, I would have loved to have had Alan as my teacher.
I mean, that would have been awesome. That's not true. Oh my gosh, I hate your teacher.
That's wild. That doesn't make any sense to me.
Like, that's like hardcore history.
Hardcore history. The name of the episode is called The Celtic Holocaust. It's like 6 episodes ago. He releases like 1 episode a year. It's very, very slow because he put so much research into it. But it's from like 2018 or something. So it's like a few episodes ago.
Yeah. In closing, like the quote, like I think Anitha, you put the quote in the Discord, but I had already tabbed it. The Cicero, what a lot of trouble one avoids if one refuses to have anything to do with the common herd. To have no job, to devote one's time to literature is the most wonderful thing in the world. To have no freaking job and to devote my time to just reading. Like, what an awesome thing that would be.
Yeah.
Right.
I need to be independently wealthy. So, us book nerds, of course, we love that quote, but,
Yeah.
So, at any rate, everyone who joined us on this journey, this was a successful read-along. This pleases me greatly. And I am glad that we read these because, like you, Kyle, like this is my go-to, like, Roman historical fiction. Because, I've read, like you, I've read, but I haven't read a ton. But everything I read is generally fine. Like, it's generally fine. But I'm just like, with such a rich period, why are they always just fine and not like great? And so it makes me very sad. Like, I stopped reading any Roman historical fiction for a long time because I'm like, I don't want to read a mid book,
I want better Hannibal books more than anything.
Totally agree with Matt here.
I love Hannibal so much.
Completely.
David Anthony Durham has a Hannibal book that I'm supposed to be reading with Scott, the Bald Booktuber, sometime this year. I really hope it's good because, man, I love it.
Please tell me if it is. Yeah. The Barca family, like the whole the freaking Second Punic War, the Punic Wars in general are just fascinating to me. But at any rate, thank you all for joining us. I'm glad anybody who discovered this and loved it. That's fantastic. This has been, Yeah, if you get a Hannibal book, you're gonna get a Scipio book. I know, right? And Philip of Macedon gets done dirty in friggin' Lion of Macedon. But yeah, I agree. No, Philip of Macedon, I love Philip of Macedon. Alexander can go die in a fire.
Alan, we need to do something like this for Greek history.
Okay, so I have been slowly coming to the realization that I really do need to just write a historical fiction. Like, screw this fantasy nonsense that I've been obsessed with for forever. Like, because I'm just like, why does this not exist? Why is there no Peloponnesian War historical fiction? Like why?
There's some, but yeah, there should be more for sure.
Like, why is the Sicilian expedition not its own freaking book? Like, what a fascinating, like, just could not be a real thing, except that it is. Like, that turns into a horror movie of them trying to escape an island while slowly being picked off. So good. So, I mean, Anitha, I should just get off my duff and do it. But I'm almost intimidated by the actual, like, minutia of the time
that's
period.
what gets me too. It's so difficult because people will just get on you.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't care. Like, I wish I could just start off the book being like, hey, if you have a problem with what type of shoes they're wearing, I do not care.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. So other than the weird licenses he took and the magic, David Gemmell, I really liked the level of specificity he had with the Greeks, in that it was enough to know that, like, he knows what this is. Like, he's not writing it out of nowhere, but it didn't matter what type of shoes. Like, none of that mattered. Like, we didn't get down to that nitty gritty detail, the diameter of the hoplons, any of that stuff. You know what I mean? And I was like, oh, there can be books like this where we don't have to go, into every minute detail of the time period, because that is what's intimidating to me. And I agree. The 100% post Peloponnesian War, the Corinthian War, and the Theban Spartan War, like the downfall of Sparta with Agesilaus II and Epaminondas and Pelopidas, one of my favorite periods. Anyway, yeah, I know, Anitha. I should write it. Like, I should write something.
Do you guys want to, like, no timeline on this, but do you guys want to, like, buddy read the, like, Hannah Golden, like, Athens books?
I have. So the first one is somewhere. Gates of Athens. So this is the
and then Protector is the second one.
And then it's Pericles, and then the sequel to Pericles.
Yeah, so it's like they're not direct, like, that's not like a direct continuation, but it's like the same.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. We definitely should at some point, but let's try to get
I realized I'm enjoying historical fiction a lot, so count me in. Just
I'm not. It's not even on the docket for like a while for me with those ones, but I do really want to read them. But I think we should do I, Claudius next when we have time.
Yes, we definitely will do I, Claudius soon for sure.
Yeah.
So anyway, thanks everybody for joining us. Anitha and Kyle, thank you again. This has been really, really fun. And we'll catch you guys offline. So see you later.
Bye, everybody.
Majorian hush, Matthew.